The crystal chandelier above the dining table cast perfect light across the white tablecloth as I cut into my salmon. My mother's voice had that particular edge I'd learned to recognize over 28 years. The tone that meant she'd made a decision and expected immediate compliance. "We need to discuss your financial situation, Charlotte," she said, setting down her wine glass with calculated precision. "Your father and I have decided it's time for some changes." My sister Victoria leaned forward, her diamond bracelet catching the light. At 32, she'd perfected the art of looking both sympathetic and superior simultaneously. "It's really for your own good, Charlie." I continued eating, keeping my expression neutral. "What changes?" "We're cutting off your support," Mom declared. "Effective immediately. No more monthly allowance, no more credit cards, no more apartment payments. You're 28 years old. It's time to grow up and support yourself like your sister does." My brother Marcus nodded from across the table, his expression smug. At 35, he considered himself the family's financial genius, despite the fact that his successful real estate ventures had required 3 bailouts in the past 5 years. "We've all been enabling your lazy lifestyle for too long. Victoria has her boutique. I have my investments. You just exist." "I work," I said quietly, taking a sip of water. Victoria laughed. "You volunteer at that little nonprofit. That's not a real job, sweetie. That's a hobby for trust fund babies who don't want to admit they're trust fund babies." "The Children's Literacy Foundation pays me," I pointed out. $30,000 a year, Marcus scoffed. "That won't even cover your apartment rent. How do you plan to maintain your lifestyle on nonprofit salary?" I set down my fork carefully. "I'll manage." "You'll manage." Mom's voice rose slightly. "Charlotte, your apartment costs $8,000 a month. Your car payment is $1,200. Your health insurance, your gym membership, your lifestyle. Do you have any idea how much we've been subsidizing your existence?" "I'm aware," I said. "Are you?" Dad finally spoke, his voice carrying the weight of disappointment I'd heard my entire life. "Because your mother and I have been reviewing the family finances, and we're spending over $15,000 a month supporting you while you play at being a working woman." "We've been more than generous," Mom continued. "You had a full ride to Princeton. We bought you that car when you graduated. We've paid for your apartment for 6 years. We've given you every opportunity to establish yourself, and instead you choose to work at a charity making poverty wages." Victoria reached across the table, patting my hand with false sympathy. "It's tough love, but you need it. When Mom and Dad cut me off after college, it forced me to open my boutique. Now I'm completely self-sufficient." I almost laughed at that. Victoria's boutique had required a $2 million investment from the family trust, lost money for 3 straight years, and still only stayed afloat because Mom and her friends treated it like their personal shopping club, paying premium prices for mediocre clothes. "Marcus learned the same lesson," Dad added. "He built his real estate portfolio from the ground up. That portfolio had crashed twice, requiring the family trust to quietly purchase his defaulting properties at inflated prices to save him from bankruptcy." But I said nothing. "So here's what's happening," Mom announced. "As of tomorrow, all financial support ends. Your credit cards will be canceled. We'll give you 60 days to move out of the apartment. That's more than generous. After that, you're on your own. We're doing this because we love you," Victoria added, her voice dripping with false concern. "You need to learn what the real world is like." Marcus leaned back in his chair, swirling his scotch. "Maybe try applying to some real companies. With your Princeton degree, you could probably get an entry-level position somewhere. It won't pay much at first, but that's how the rest of us started." The rest of us, meaning him and Victoria, both of whom had never worked a day without family money backing every venture, funding every failure and cushioning every fall. "I understand," I said simply. Mom blinked. "You understand? That's all you have to say." "What would you like me to say?" "Some acknowledgement that you've been living off our generosity," Dad said. "Some gratitude for the years of support. Some plan for how you'll survive without our help." "I'm grateful for your past support," I said carefully. "And I'll figure out the rest." "You'll figure it out," Marcus repeated mockingly. "Charlie, you're about to be evicted from an $8,000 apartment on a $30,000 salary. I don't think you grasp the reality of your situation." "Perhaps not," I agreed. Victoria's expression shifted to something almost pitying. Do you want me to talk to some of my friends? Maybe someone needs an assistant or something. It won't pay well, but it's better than nothing. That's kind of you, I said. I'll let you know if I need help. When you need help, Mom corrected. Charlotte, pride is fine, but we're talking about your survival. You have no savings. We know because we've been funding your entire life. You have no assets except that car, which you'll probably have to sell. You have no financial literacy because you've never had to manage money. We're not trying to be cruel, Dad said, though his tone suggested otherwise. We're trying to teach you responsibility. Your grandfather built this family's wealth through hard work and discipline. Your mother and I have maintained it through careful management. We've watched you drift through life without purpose or ambition, and we've enabled it for too long. Grandpa Charles would be disappointed, Marcus added. He believed in earning your place in the world. I took another sip of water, letting the comment pass. Grandpa Charles would have been disappointed certainly, but not in me. So we're clear. Mom asked. No more money. No more support. You're on your own. Crystal clear, I confirmed. Good. She picked up her wine glass again. Now let's discuss something more pleasant. Victoria, how's the boutique doing? Victoria launched into a detailed description of her latest collection, carefully omitting the fact that she'd lost $40,000 last quarter. Marcus chimed in about his newest real estate acquisition, not mentioning that it was underwater on the mortgage. Dad discussed his golf handicap. Mom planned her upcoming charity gala. I finished my dinner in silence, watching my family celebrate what they believed was an important lesson in responsibility. They saw a dependent daughter finally being forced into adulthood. They had no idea what they'd just set in motion. After dessert, I excused myself politely. I should get home and start planning. That's the spirit, Dad said approvingly. Face your challenges head on. I'll text you some job listings, Victoria promised. Entry-level stuff, but we all have to start somewhere. Let me know when you need help moving, Marcus offered. You'll probably have to downsize significantly. Maybe find a studio in a cheaper neighborhood. Thank you all, I said. For everything. Mom stood giving me a stiff hug. You'll thank us eventually, Charlotte. When you're standing on your own 2 feet supporting yourself, you'll understand that we did this out of love. I drove home in the Mercedes they thought they'd be repossessing in 60 days, parked in the garage they believed I couldn't afford much longer, and rode the elevator to the apartment they assumed I'd be abandoning. Once inside, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the couch, my phone in hand. The screen showed 3 missed calls from the same number. Whitmore and Associates Trust Administration. I'd been ignoring them during dinner, knowing exactly why they were calling. I dialed the number. Sarah Whitmore answered on the first ring. Miss Hartwell, she said warmly. I've been trying to reach you. We noticed some unusual activity and wanted to confirm your instructions. What unusual activity? Asked though I knew. Your mother contacted us this afternoon, requesting information about transferring funds and modifying distribution schedules. When I explained that only the trustee could authorize such changes, she seemed quite surprised. She indicated you'd been cut off financially and suggested the trust should reflect that decision. I closed my eyes. What did you tell her? Nothing, Sarah assured me. Client confidentiality is absolute. But Ms. Hartwell, she seemed genuinely unaware of the trust structure. I wanted to confirm, should I inform your family of your position as trustee? Not yet, I said quietly. Understood. However, I should mention that your brother called an hour ago with similar questions. He wanted to know about accelerating his distributions and mentioned you'd be out of the picture, financially. When I asked for clarification, he hung up. I wasn't surprised. Marcus always moved fast when he sensed opportunity. There's one more thing, Sarah continued. Your father scheduled an appointment for tomorrow morning. He mentioned wanting to restructure the family trust to reflect current realities. His exact words. Did you inform him that requires my approval? No. I thought you'd prefer to handle that conversation yourself. What time is his appointment? 10 o'clock. I'll be there, I decided. Actually, Sarah, let's schedule a full family meeting. Contact my parents, Victoria and Marcus. Tell them it's mandatory for all trust beneficiaries. Tomorrow at 10. All of them. Sarah's surprise was evident. Miss Hartwell, are you sure? This could get complicated. It's already complicated, I pointed out. They've decided to cut me off because they think I'm financially dependent on them. They should probably know the truth before they do anything drastic. Like trying to restructure a trust they don't control, Sarah said dryly. I'll make the calls. Should I mention you'll be attending? No. Let it be a surprise. After I hung up, I walked to my home office and opened the locked file cabinet where I kept the documents my family had never bothered to read. The trust documents, the financial statements, the distribution schedules, the succession plans. Grandpa Charles had established the family trust 40 years ago with $30 million from the sale of his manufacturing company. Through careful management and strategic investments, it had grown to $80 million. The trust provided monthly distributions to all family members, funded their businesses, paid for their homes and maintained their lifestyle. And for the past 7 years since Grandpa's death, I'd been the trustee. Not because I'd asked for the position. Not because I'd schemed or manipulated. But because Grandpa Charles had known something my parents never understood. Wealth without wisdom was just money waiting to be wasted. He'd watched Dad coast through life on inherited money, making poor investments and poorer decisions. He'd seen Mom's spending habits accelerate year after year, her sense of entitlement growing with every designer purchase. He'd observed Marcus's reckless business ventures and Victoria's delusional entrepreneurship, both funded by family money they treated as infinite. And he'd watched me quietly study finance at Princeton, intern at Whitmore and Associates during my summers, and ask him careful questions about trust management and fiduciary responsibility. Most people think being rich is about spending money, he told me during one of our last conversations. But real wealth is about preserving it for future generations. Your parents don't understand that. Your siblings won't learn it. But you, Charlotte, you have the temperament for stewardship. He changed the trust documents 2 weeks before his death, naming me as successor trustee with full discretionary authority over all distributions. My parents and siblings were beneficiaries, entitled to monthly distributions at my discretion. But they had no control, no authority, and no ability to modify the trust without my approval. They'd never asked about the trust structure. Never read the documents. Never questioned why the distributions kept flowing smoothly, businesses kept getting funded, and lifestyle kept being maintained. They assumed Dad managed everything just as Grandpa had. But Dad wasn't the trustee. He'd never been the trustee. And tomorrow, when he walked into Whitmore and Associates expecting to restructure the family trust to punish his disappointing daughter, he was going to learn exactly who controlled the $80 million his entire life depended on. I slept surprisingly well that night. The next morning, I dressed in the Tom Ford suit I'd bought with my own money, my salary from the nonprofit, carefully saved over 6 years. I pulled my hair into a sleek bun, applied minimal makeup, and drove to the Whitmore and Associates offices in downtown Boston. Sarah met me in the lobby, her expression carefully professional but her eyes amused. They're all in the main conference room. Your father arrived early and has been pacing for 20 minutes. Your mother keeps asking why this meeting is necessary. Marcus tried to reschedule, and Victoria is confused about why she needs to be here at all. And they don't know I'm coming? I said all trust beneficiaries were required to attend. I never mentioned you were also the trustee. She paused. Are you ready for this? I've been ready for 7 years, I said. I just hoped it wouldn't come to this. We walked to the conference room together. Through the glass walls I could see my family arranged around the mahogany table. Dad sat at the head looking proprietary. Mom was checking her phone. Marcus was typing on his laptop. Victoria was examining her manicure. None of them looked up when Sarah and I entered. Thank you all for coming, Sarah began professionally. As I mentioned, this is a mandatory meeting for all beneficiaries of the Charles Hartwell Family Trust. We have some important matters to discuss regarding trust administration and distribution schedules. Dad waved his hand dismissively. It's fine. Let's make this quick. I have a golf game at noon. Now, I've been reviewing our family's financial situation, and I want to make some changes to the trust structure. Mr. Hartwell, Sarah interrupted gently. Before we discuss any potential changes, I need to ensure everyone understands the current trust structure. Are you familiar with the terms of your father's trust? Of course, Dad said impatiently. My father established it 40 years ago. I've been managing it since his death. It provides distributions to family members and funds various family needs. Simple enough. I see. Sarah's tone remained neutral. And you believe you're the trustee? Obviously. I'm the eldest son. My father's successor. That's how these things work. Mom nodded agreement. Marcus and Victoria looked bored. I remained silent, standing near the door. Mr. Hartwell, Sarah said carefully, I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. You're not the trustee of the Charles Hartwell Family Trust. You never have been. The room went completely still. Dad's face reddened. That's ridiculous. Of course I'm the trustee. Who else would it be? According to the trust documents executed by your father 7 years ago, the current trustee is Charlotte Hartwell. For heads turned to look at me. The silence stretched for 5 long seconds. Then Dad laughed. That's absurd, Charlotte. She's just the person who's been managing your monthly distributions for 7 years, Sarah finished smoothly. The person who approved Marcus's real estate bailouts. The person who funded Victoria's boutique. The person who's maintained all of your lifestyles while working at a nonprofit and living within her means. This is a joke, Marcus said, his voice sharp. Charlie doesn't manage the trust. She doesn't manage anything. She works at a charity. She works at a charity, Sarah agreed, and manages an $80 million trust fund that provides the monthly distributions you all depend on. The $60,000 a month to your parents. The $45,000 to you, Marcus. The $38,000 to Victoria. All at Charlotte's discretion as trustee. Mom's face had gone pale. That can't be right. Charles wouldn't have. Why would he make Charlotte the trustee? Perhaps, I said quietly, speaking for the first time since entering the room, because Grandpa knew I wouldn't treat family wealth like an infinite ATM. Victoria stood abruptly. This is insane. You're telling us that Charlie, who we just cut off financially, actually controls all of our money. Not your money, Sarah corrected. The trust's money. Money that Charles Hartwell designated for family support, with distribution amounts and terms determined by the trustee. Charlotte has been exceptionally generous in her management, approving distributions that exceed the trust's recommended guidelines and funding business ventures that most professional trustees would have declined. My real estate investments are sound, Marcus snapped. Your real estate investments have lost the trust approximately $3 million over 5 years, Sarah replied, consulting her notes. Charlotte approved bailout funding 3 times to prevent you from declaring bankruptcy. Victoria's boutique required a $2 million investment and has never shown a profit, I added softly. I approved it anyway because family business ventures are within the trust's purpose. You. Dad's voice had dropped to a dangerous low. You've been making these decisions? A child who's never worked a real day in her life. A Princeton graduate with a degree in finance who interned at this firm for 3 summers and passed her Series 65 exam at 22, Sarah interjected. Charlotte has been one of the most conscientious trustees I've worked with in 20 years. Mom shook her head, her perfectly styled hair not moving. This doesn't make sense. Why wouldn't Charles tell us? Why wouldn't you tell us, Charlotte? Grandpa told Dad, I said. He gave him the trust documents after he changed them. He explained the structure. Dad never read them. None of you did. That's, Dad started, then stopped, his expression shifting as memory caught up with denial. And I didn't tell you, I continued, because Grandpa asked me not to. He said if I did my job right, you'd never need to know who managed the money. You'd just live your lives, secure and comfortable without worrying about the details. This is unacceptable, Marcus declared. I'll contest this. There's no way a trust this size should be controlled by. By whom? I asked calmly. The person who's grown it from $65 million to $80 million through careful investment? The person who's managed distributions responsibly while you've lost millions on failed ventures? The person who's worked a real job to understand the value of money while you've all treated it as an entitlement? You smug little. Marcus stood, his face flushed. Sit down, Mr. Hartwell, Sarah said firmly. This is a professional meeting and I won't tolerate aggressive behavior. Victoria's voice came out small. So when Mom said she was cutting you off, She was announcing that she'd stop paying expenses that I've been paying for myself for years, I said. The apartment is in my name. The car is paid off. My credit cards are mine. The monthly distributions you thought were supporting me have been going into my savings account, which now has a balance of approximately $1.2 million. Mom gasped. While I've been living on my nonprofit salary, I continued, and learning what $30,000 a year actually feels like. Which is why I drive a 6-year-old Mercedes instead of buying a new one every 2 years like some people. Why I volunteer at charity events instead of paying premium prices for couture. Why I've maintained the same apartment instead of upgrading to a penthouse. You've been testing us, Dad said slowly. All these years, you've been watching us waste money while you pretended to be one of us. I've been being one of you, I corrected. A beneficiary of Grandpa's trust just like you. The difference is that I also have the responsibility of managing it. And the wisdom to know that family wealth isn't infinite. So what now? Marcus demanded. You cut us all off? Punish us for not knowing you were in control? I looked at him for a long moment. That depends. On what? On whether you're capable of learning the lesson Grandpa tried to teach. I turned to Sarah. What are the current monthly distributions? She consulted her tablet. Mr. and Mrs. Hartwell, $60,000. Marcus, $45,000. Victoria, $38,000. Total family distributions, approximately $143,000 per month, or $1.7 million annually. And the trust's recommended distribution rate for long-term preservation? No more than 4% of assets annually. For an $80 million trust, that's approximately $3.2 million. Your family's personal distributions represent about half of the safe distribution rate. When we add in business funding and one-time expenses, the trust is distributing at the maximum sustainable rate. I nodded. So there's no room for expansion. No cushion for emergencies. No buffer for market downturns. Correct. I looked at my family, all of them watching me now with varying expressions of shock, anger, and fear. Here's what's going to happen, I said calmly. Your current distributions will continue unchanged. I'm not going to punish you for not knowing something you never bothered to learn. But there will be new conditions. Conditions. Mom's voice was sharp. Marcus, your next real estate venture will require a comprehensive business plan reviewed by independent consultants before the trust invests $1. If it fails, there will be no more bailouts. You'll manage your losses with your own distribution money. Marcus opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. Victoria, your boutique has 2 years to become profitable or self-sustaining. I'll continue current funding during that period, but after that it either stands on its own or closes. I'll help you hire a real business consultant if you're interested in actually succeeding. Victoria looked stricken but nodded slowly. Mom and Dad, your distributions continue as is. But I need you to meet with a financial advisor and create a budget. A real budget that accounts for your actual spending versus income. Because eventually the trust will pass to the next generation, and they deserve the same security you've enjoyed. And if we refuse? Dad asked coldly. Then I'll reduce distributions to the minimum required by the trust documents, which is approximately 40% of what you currently receive, and put the remainder in preservation accounts for future generations. That's my right and responsibility as trustee. The room fell silent again. You can't be serious, Mom finally said. Charlotte, we're your family. Exactly, I agreed. You're my family. Which is why I've been protecting your financial security for 7 years while you assumed I was the family failure. Which is why I'm still protecting it now, even after you decided to cut me off for not living up to your standards. This is blackmail, Marcus declared. No, Sarah interjected. This is trust administration. Charlotte has been extraordinarily generous. Most trustees would have implemented these conditions years ago. I gave you the benefit of the doubt, I said. I hoped you'd eventually learn to value money appropriately without being forced. But yesterday when you decided to cut off my support I never needed and never used, you proved that you still see family wealth as a weapon to control people rather than a responsibility to preserve. I stood gathering my bag. Sarah will schedule individual meetings with each of you to discuss the new terms. You'll sign acknowledgement forms confirming you understand the trust structure. And then we'll move forward as a family that actually understands how our financial security works. Where are you going? Victoria asked. To work, I said simply. I have a meeting at the Children's Literacy Foundation at 11. We're launching a new program for underserved communities. It pays $30,000 a year, but it's fulfilling work. You should try it sometime, working for something other than money. I walked to the door, then paused and looked back. Oh, and one more thing. The apartment you thought you'd be repossessing in 60 days? I bought it 3 years ago. With my own savings. The car you assumed you'd be taking back? Paid off in full. The lifestyle you believed you were funding? Self-sustaining. I don't need your money. I never did. Then why didn't you tell us? Mom asked, her voice breaking slightly. Because Grandpa asked me to protect you, I said softly. From yourselves and from the world. That's what a trustee does. That's what family does. Even when the family forgets who's actually taking care of whom. I left them sitting in stunned silence. As I drove to the nonprofit, my phone rang. That, she said, was the most professionally devastating family meeting I've witnessed in 2 decades of trust administration. Too harsh? I asked. Perfectly calibrated. Your grandfather would be proud. Will they comply? They don't have a choice. But Charlotte? I think they'll be better for it. Sometimes people need to understand the foundation they're standing on before they learn not to take it for granted. I hope you're right. I am. And for what it's worth, that speech about working for something other than money, that's going to haunt them. I smiled slightly. Good. That evening my phone buzzed with messages. First Victoria, can we talk? Really talk. Then Marcus, I need to understand the trust terms. Tomorrow. Finally Mom, family dinner Sunday. Please come. We need to discuss this properly. Dad's message came last, just 3 words. Your grandfather knew. I responded to each with simple agreement. Yes to talking. Yes to explaining. Yes to Sunday dinner. Because that's what family does. Even when they forget. Even when they fail. Even when they need to be reminded that love and money aren't the same thing. And that the person they dismissed as dependent was actually the one holding everything together. Grandpa Charles had known what he was doing when he made me trustee. He'd given me the tools to protect my family from their own worst impulses, the authority to preserve wealth for future generations, and the wisdom to know that real security comes from understanding value, not just having money. And now, finally, my family was ready to learn.